Hello, hello, Kev Ryan here, and let's talk some more Horizon War Zero Dark. This is another mission report. This is going to be for Mission 2 of Operation Gemini, and that mission is the Heist. If you recall, last time we had to get into the center of the map, download some data, then get off screen. In this one, there's going to be an objective marker in the middle of the map that we have to activate. Once that activates, we will learn where the entrance to the vault is, basically by deploying another objective, which we will then have to open. Once it's open, everybody escapes, and then we're done. For this mission, the visibility level is going to be lower than before, which means it's easier to see and thus easier to shoot. And there's an added objective, which is that if we can kill everyone when we leave, we can instead get a benefit for the next mission in Operation Gemini. That's not something that's going to happen, but it's something that could happen. For deployment, we have a restricted entry, unless we want to run down the clock a bit in order to get a flanking entry. And that is exactly what I'm going to do. I will get that flanking entry. Let me use this picture to talk a little bit about why. So what's going on here is we have the overall general map. I've chosen for a 3-foot by 3-foot deployment rather than the rectangular 2 by 4-foot that I usually use, the edges of which you can kind of see here and here. That red's not showing up pretty well, but you can see what I've drawn. And over here is the console that we have to interact with, which is the overall requirement. Having rolled my enemy's deployment, they are all basically bunched up over here in this section. And what I really want to do is I really want to deploy over approximately in that position, and then as quickly as I can, get an explosive round parked on this guy to blow up as many of the enemy as I can. Now, with normal deployment on restricted entry, you pick a corner, and then you get to deploy everybody in that corner. However, you have to pick that corner before the enemy has deployed. With flanking entry, on the other hand, I can run down the clock, and then I can get some guys deployed in a corner and some guys deployed on the opposite side. And because of the way I'm doing this, I am allowing myself to choose that corner and opposite side after the enemy deploys. So, in other words, with normal deployment, I get to choose a corner before seeing the enemy. I had chosen that corner because it seemed kind of nice. However, I instead run down the clock and instead want to be in a corner over there. The corner actually wasn't in the previous picture, but I don't have a better one at setup, so let's use this one. Here is the corner I chose to deploy in. Over there is the flanking edge. As you can see, I have put Recon and Nomad in the corner, and Cap over there is flanking. The plan is largely successful. First thing I do is deploy. Second thing I do is get Recon involved, because what I want to do is I want to target this guy. Remember, targeting makes it so that you roll extra dice when you attack and you get an extra hit, so being targeted is great. Or painful, I suppose, if your own guys are targeted. And then I'm going to have Nomad shoot an explosive round and hopefully get lots of hits and blow everybody up. That pretty much works exactly as planned. I do have to use a lot of my rerolls from my leader in order to make that happen, but if I just flash between these two pictures, you can see the result. So this is the before, and here is roughly the after. As you can see, a whole bunch of people have been removed from this picture, and a whole bunch more have been knocked out. In fact, basically there's only one enemy left, which is the only one that wasn't in line of fire of the initial explosion. This is very devastating to the enemy, and it's going to be pretty great for me. What happens next? Well, not much. I have to get Cap in here. I figure I want to bring Cap in and get him closer to the console before I move my guys close to this console. The console is the objective, which means that any enemies that deploy from complications are going to deploy around this thing. So I kind of want to stay safe. Plus, Cap is stealthy, so unless I am dumb, he can get there without triggering any particularly bad enemy effects. I am a little bit dumb. I believe I do draw a heart card, which means that the nearest bogey to this guy is able to recover from the unconscious state, which means that this guy up here does recover. But other than that, things go pretty well. Cap manages to get in here. The combination of stealthy and having a high discipline means that he's able to move, and then I think he actually uses a stealthy close quarters assassination to take out the bogey here, which is why you don't see it. And so all that's left is this bogey, which was resurrected by a heart card and then has a support token. These regular orders are what I'm using for the support tokens, by the way. At this point, things are looking pretty good, but they're also a little tricky. And it has to do with the way that complications and stuff get triggered from enemy activations. After you do your activation, you draw a card from the deck in order to see what type of enemy responds: grunt, elite, boss, etc. If you can't activate a given trooper type, so if you don't have any grunts, it moves up to the next level, elite, from elite to boss, And if you can't activate a boss, it becomes a complication. So what we have right here is just one enemy, and that enemy is an elite. Right now, if I draw an ace, and thereby have to activate a boss, it'll skip straight up to the complication. That's not so bad, because aces aren't super likely. However, if I kill this guy, then every single card draw becomes a complication. And while complications aren't always bad, some of them can be, and the level of unpredictability from them can be dangerous. On the other hand, in the current situation, every card draw that isn't a complication is going to activate this elite, and he is pretty close to cap. Being pretty close to cap, he stands a good chance of being able to run over and inflict some wounds. So I kind of have to decide, do I want to kill this guy and then deal with the complications, or can I endure this guy a little bit while trying to do some other stuff? And as you can see from this picture, and as you can see from the fact that the enemy elite walked from his original position over here, and Cap now has a wound, I decided to go with a little bit of both. First I tried to do some stuff, then Cap got shot, and I decided to put that guy out of his misery. My next activation, I have Recon, who remember is kind of our objective grabber guy, push a button on the console. This triggers the next phase, which is that we have the secret bank vault location, which is there. However, some complications are drawn. And in particular, what happens is we have some grunts get spawned. I think these 2 grunts get spawned, as well as a boss. As far as complications go, this isn't too dreadful. It could certainly be worse. However, I now have to deal with yet more baddies, and this boss in particular is like right there and in a pretty dangerous situation. Step 1 is going to be to have Nomad swing over to this position and shoot him. Remember, Nomad is our best shooter. With him taken care of, the next step is going to be to try to get this guy up into here in order to take out some of the remaining grunts. And unfortunately, through that process, Cap is going to get fairly substantially wounded. I think I draw another complication, and the hero closest to the gate, or objective or whatever, takes an additional 2 wounds. This is pretty damaging. I'm therefore left with a bit of a tough spot, because what I want to do is I want to heal everybody up so that I can get the achievement of everybody being fully healthy and, fully great as I go through the exit. Unfortunately, this is going to take a lot of orders, and during that time, the enemy is going to be doing stuff, and to be honest, it probably isn't a great idea. I should probably just leave, but I don't just leave. And the reason I say that I should probably just leave, even though I don't, is that eventually complications are drawn. A sniper gets spawned right behind Recon, and Recon is promptly targeted and then shot and completely taken out. I think he takes like 5 wounds in one go. This is because snipers are really, really dangerous. They have a base attack of 4, which is pretty high. Targeted is, of course, very dangerous. And the last problem is that at this distance, I think they're like 1 inch away. Maybe there's some cover, visibility 3. Lots of dice are just going to be straight up hits. Like, I think if you roll a 5 or higher, it's going to be a hit. And so that's pretty bad. I did try to shoot this guy, but I tried to shoot this guy in like a clever fashion by having him get targeted first and then having Nomad swing around to do the shot, and the dice just don't work out. I don't successfully kill him. So this was kind of a blunder. Really, I should have just gotten out of there. Having been in this initial situation, I should have tried to kill him in the most direct way possible. And while it is true that I got unlucky getting hit and shot for like 5 wounds in one go, I am nevertheless kind of not in a great spot. That being done, I decide enough is enough. I kind of kill this guy. I then decide to have Nomad sweep into this position. The reason I want Nomad to do this is because I have to push this objective button, which is an acuity roll. Neither of these two are particularly acute. Their acuity score is really low. So I want her to have as many support tokens as I can, and I want her to have the rerolls that come from Cap as the leader. Cap can't spend his rerolls on himself, only others. So that's why she's doing it. During that time, enemy sniper spawns, and I kind of have no choice but to just endure those punches. That said, punches are endured. Some more enemies are spawned, which isn't great, but we are able to escape. And also, in escaping, I do drag Recon's body through the wide gate, and this is nice because it means that I am able to have him available on the next mission without having to go rescue him. The way that casualties work, by the way, in operations like Operation Gemini, is that if you have casualties on a mission, then they're not dead. Instead, they are simply left behind and captured, and you have to go and rescue them in order to succeed. Strictly speaking, by the way, I think that if you leave people behind, whether they're a casualty or not, they get captured and you have to rescue them. But I don't know why you would leave people behind if you still have people that are alive. Maybe the deck runs out, I don't know. The other thing you have to do if someone is a casualty is they lose a point off of one of their stats. You can spend experience in order to offset that, but because Recon's a casualty, he's not getting that much experience for this mission, and so he's just going to get a -1 penalty. I put it on his move stat because that's already pretty high, but it is a little bit painful to lose this. And on that, I win. Before closing this mission report out, I do kind of want to talk about this situation, which is where I've basically dealt with all of the bad guys, but I still have the objective in place, and I have to do a bunch of activations to complete the mission. Equivalently, I could talk about this moment where, again, pretty much all the bad guys have been taken out, and I want to spend a bunch of activations trying to heal up Cap. In both cases, I have largely dealt with everything that needs to be dealt with, and what that means is that all that's going to be happening are complications. And that doesn't feel great. Unlike normal gameplay where there's bad guys on the board, I really have no way to control what kind of complications are showing up, and because I have no way to control them, I don't really have a way to interact with them. All I really can do is just endure them. Some of these aren't bad in terms of enduring, especially if what happens is a bunch of enemies are spawned. If that happens, then you've gone from a situation where there are no enemies and nothing to interact with to a situation where there are enemies and you can interact with them. Other complications, especially in a circumstance like this one, where I've killed everything, so complications are the only thing to deal with, in those cases, some of the complications can feel kind of bad. In particular, the complication here, where I take 2 wounds from the complication, it really stinks because it's going to take 2 activations in order to heal this guy properly. And during those 2 activations, 2 more complications are going to get generated. And it's not even like I could do much at this point to change that circumstance. I've killed everybody. The complications are going to happen, and I only get to do 1 thing per activation. So yeah, when the game gets into this state, it doesn't feel wonderful. Of course, to some extent, I do think that's kind of the point. Part of your goal here is to figure out a way to accomplish the mission without ending up in a situation where it's just going to be complication after complication after complication. And the other thing that's kind of part of the point is a lot of the complications just generate additional bad guys, which means that you're going to try to accomplish the mission as the bad guys are, continuing to descend upon your Special Forces team, and that can feel really dramatic. On the other hand, part of this is definitely core to the game, or at least core to this mission. In this mission, I have to do an awful lot of stuff centered around the objective and then the secondary objective. The bad guys are just going to start there. So either I'm dealing with complications, or I'm dealing with bad guys right next to me who could shoot me and deal damage to me. Now, I suppose in retrospect, what I could have done beforehand is, way back when this guy was alive and Cap was right there, when there was only 1 guy left, I could have used my activations to try to draw off 1 enemy into a safer place. This is kind of like what I did during the last battle report, where I drew the combat mech away from me before escaping, so that then Cap would have an easier time escaping himself. And yeah, I think that would have been a more strategic thing to do. I think it would have been supported by the rules. I don't think it would have been particularly cheesy, personally, because there is still some risk and some tactics to it. But the reason that that doesn't work is that, I'm in this situation now and saying, hey, if you'd done something different earlier, you could have gotten out of it. That's all well and good, but now that I'm in this situation now, what am I supposed to do, So this situation, I think, is not where Horizon Wars Zero Dark is at its finest in terms of gameplay. That being said, figuring out how to avoid that situation is a tactically interesting problem. We've talked about some ways we could do that. And also, I do think that most of the missions and the complications in general don't lead to this problematic situation. Most of the time, the complications and the threat of complications are interesting and lead to fun and dramatic outcomes. In fact, I really like how in a mission like Rescue, once you've killed everybody, there's all sorts of complications coming your way, but you're just trying to book it out of there and run away as fast as you can, which ends up meaning that the enemies are spawning and they're chasing after you, and it's really dramatic and you're running and it's fun. So I don't think even the situation wherein you generate complications when there are no troopers to activate, I don't even think that's a problem. One other thing I will add, I've played the Heist a couple of times, and this is the only time I've ended up in this particular situation. So, on the whole, I think if you try this mission, I think you'll probably have fun. Maybe it'll be hard. Maybe you'll end up in this situation. But now that I've told you about it, you can do your best to avoid it. And I think that the threat of ending up here does mean that you have to think of interesting ways to tackle the problems. And that's cool too. So with that in mind, I'll close out this report. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you around.